hello, and thank you for joining me for another IT Wire and Alex on Tech video. I'm here today with James Christopher, the CIO of Temperzone. Welcome to the program.
Hi.
Now we're here at Epicor Insights 2018, the conference in Nashville. Before we get to what Temperzone does, what has been your impression of the event thus far?
It's great. This is my second. I came last year, was first, and that was it's a long way, and it's a culture shock to come into a huge American conference that we don't really have in our size. But it's great to be able to mix and mingle. We do get a lot more direct access to the Epicor staff, which I think is a key thing for us.
Absolutely. And so, tell us a bit about Temperzone, and after that, some of the Epicor solutions you've been using to improve your business.
Well, Temperzone's been around for over 60 years now, and we manufacture commercial air conditioning, and we distribute Hitachi as well on products in New Zealand. So we've got a couple of large factories, one in New Zealand, 100,000 square feet, and another large one in Australia. And we actually manufacture from raw materials, from steel right through to completing it. We've got a large R&D department, so we do all our own in-house electronics. And yeah, we're a reasonably well-known name in the fields, most of the large shopping malls, hotels. And we do a lot of work up into Southeast Asia now as well.
And I mean, being able to continue manufacturing in Australia and New Zealand, when you always hear the stories of manufacturing going to China, I mean, that's a pretty amazing thing. It is, and I think you've got to have a point of difference, and I think ours has been quality for that many years as well. It's that type of product.
It's a driver for the company to stay manufacturing in New Zealand and Australia. And a lot of that we get through just trying to drive efficiency into the business.
Sure.
We can't mass manufacture, and we can't manufacture plastics. It's got to be a good product to sell on the market.
And so which of Epicor's solutions are you using, and how have they helped you to make the factory floor more efficient and keep that manufacturing local?
We're using Epicor ERP 10. We actually just finished in the last 3 weeks an upgrade to, I think, the latest release, ERT 10.2. And I guess it was selected prior to me coming on board with Temperzone, but it is very much slanted towards that manufacturing and distribution. We've heard distro factoring now, which is sort of what we do as well.
Yeah.
And I think that the choice was made to move from a legacy product to Epicor, partly because it gave us an opportunity to review processes, but it is tailored more to manufacturing, which is why I think it's a slightly smaller market in New Zealand and Australia for that. But it's a much better match. I have some SAP in my background, and I think for the size of New Zealand and Australian manufacturers, it was just a good fit.
And had you heard of Epicor before taking on the role at Temperzone?
No, I hadn't. There was a lot of research before I started. There is a reasonably good amount of information out there. I mean, that's what the internet's for now.
Yeah.
It's not a huge market in New Zealand and Australia for it, but I think we are the largest customer in New Zealand for Epicor. But the type of product and the interaction we get, it's definitely the best fit we've got.
And so have you been pleasantly surprised by all the things that Epicor can do, seeing as that you weren't part of the actual selection process for Epicor?
Yeah. I think, again, it's picking the right size, and I think that's for us. We don't just go for best of breed, we right size to the business as well, and Epicor does that. As I said, with a bit of SAP in the background, that is a behemoth, and it's hard, it's not necessarily very flexible, but it is that right match. So I've been pretty pleased with the way Epicor's fit in with the business.
So what were some of the most exciting developments you've seen thus far at the conference that you've gone, yeah, I want to implement that, I want to do that?
Really looking forward to the kinetic piece, the changing of that interface, because obviously that's the hardest piece for us. Now that more and more users out in the field are using iPhones, they're using tablets, that's the type of interaction and the GUI that they want.
Yeah.
So starting to see some of that evolve. And some of the work we want to do now is getting mobile, or is going out to the web and seeing some of that built on top of Kinetic. Could be good for us.
And have you had any issues in implementing Epicor, and how were they solved?
There's always challenges.
Sure.
I guess ERP stands for, really. Yeah. But I think it's been useful. I've actually, I had to almost change an entire Epicor team when I started.
Yeah.
And I've actually recruited, again, some ex-SAP people that I poached to come with me. And they've adapted, and within 6 to 9 months, we have completed an upgrade that's jumped us up 4 versions of the product. It's built on nice standards, I think. We're talking .NET, we're talking SQL backend. It's simple and easy to understand. The reporting is SSRS, it's not hugely proprietary. So it's reasonably easy to deal with, it's reasonably easy to troubleshoot. We have some good ins into some of the international product managers if we need them. again, I suppose because it's a little small in Australia and New Zealand, finding resource to actually run the systems, it's a little hard, but as I said, I mean, we've adapted really quickly to doing that, and it's been a short learning cycle for me, and even shorter, unfortunately, for the technical people I've been working with, and I'm sure. But Epicor have been really good at helping us. The entire upgrade we did ourselves with internal resource.
How long did that take?
That token is, I suppose, the irony is the actual process of doing the upgrade, and my tech guys will kill me, but it was about 27 hours to go up 4 versions. Where we got hit, obviously, is user testing, and jumping so many versions in one hit required a good sort of 3 to 4 month testing cycle. The way the new updates are working in the product, I think, and the cadence they've got of patching, we've got to do some work to speed that up. But overall, I think even our entire testing team, which would involve the entire business, would say that it was a pretty easy process.
And have you had a chance to interact with some of the other Epicor customers here and share some learnings?
Yeah, it's always great to see a few Kiwis and Aussies. I was just talking to some before, using that, and it's nice to see. And I think the other thing we see in New Zealand and Australia is certainly for us, and it's a goal for us, is to actually sweat the product as much as we can. And I think particularly in New Zealand and Australia, and even when we look into the US, we use as much of that product as we can. We've made that investment, and we're keen to get in and use as much as we can. So it's very interesting to see some of the larger manufacturers here using best of breed solutions and trying to integrate. But we really are trying to get the whole product, and it's some of the things we've got going forward are to just use more and more of Epicor itself, rather than implement other systems.
Well, and it's a famous thing where people only use a certain small percentage of the features of the technology they've got, and it's a little bit like using, they say, we only use 10% of our brains, and we have all that extra capacity and potential, and I'm glad to see that you're using it.
I saw a quote earlier on today that I think the average is 30% is what you use of your ERP, and that was actually in one of the sessions about the value exchange workshops they're looking to run, which is something we're keen to run now that we've completed our upgrade. And it is, I suppose, it's exciting for us because we know there's a lot more to the product that we want to use. And a lot of people, it doesn't matter what the ERP is, just don't get the maximum out of their product. So that's where we're starting to go down a CRM path. We're starting to go into sort of PIM and some of the more web-facing technologies. And I think we're keeping pace with Epicor, and Epicor are staying just a little bit ahead of us so that we've got some of these products to use.
And also, you were saying before, there can be more limited resources for support in Australia. But of course, with the internet, you can be talking to people online and getting support from the States. Just the time zones.
We have. I think even in the last month, we've probably dealt with Asia, America, and even South Africa, getting support resources and to do that. I think it's another trait of Australia and New Zealand is we try and do a lot of this ourselves.
Yes.
And we do need jacks of all trades to do some of these things. It's the other thing, the difference I think we see between New Zealand and Australia at a conference like this. Is what we've done and how we've done it with a limited number of staff. And I guess that's the other nice thing about Epicor is the guys spread their knowledge across the whole product and are actually doing the implementation. They'll do everything from finance to CRM, the whole lot. And
I noticed there's some Epicor user groups here. Have you decided to join any of them?
We were already a member of the overall Epicor user group, the online group. There is I wouldn't say it's been particularly active New Zealand group, which Epicor are very good at facilitating and then not attending the meetings so that it's very impartial. A little hard for us sometimes because as probably the largest customer, some of the other customers do use some of the products we're using, but a lot of it comes back to us for advice. So between us and
you're the resource for the others.
Yeah. Particularly, I think we were the first to go to 10.2 in New Zealand, so I'm just waiting for the calls to start on how to do that and can we help. And I think we're seeing a little bit of a shift. One of the challenges we have, particularly around resourcing, is Epicor's previous strategy was to go and buy up all of those little partners and absorb them. And now they've changed that model around, and we are seeing the first partners start to pop up in New Zealand because otherwise you're tied to the vendor and what the vendor can do for you.
And with this new announcement of the partnership with Microsoft Azure Cloud, are you going to be taking advantage of that?
We're already putting a foot into Azure anyway.
You've got on-prem and you're hybrid?
Yeah, we're on-prem in a data center at the moment, and we've gone through a bit of a 2-year, since I started, rebuild phase, catching up on a bit of technology debt over the last sort of 5 to 10 years. So we've been through that rebuild, which is why we're now starting to look at some of the new products. Cloud is definitely on the horizon for us. Really, it's I've been on the other side of trying to sell cloud products, and it's starting to stack up financially. We've still got security incentives. Yeah, and I think it depends how we're going to start using that. And I would certainly say once the investment we've made in hardware over the last couple of years starts to come to an end, and I think integration was always a bit of a drama for us. We've got machines on the shop floor that we have to integrate with, and that is starting to mature as well. So we can trust that a machine sitting in a factory can happily interact with a system in the cloud.
And I interrupted you. I think you want to say something about security.
Yeah, and security. It's interesting for me to walk into a company that is not just driven by cloud. I'm not a big believer in necessarily the cloud or bust strategy, because it's got to be what works. I think even Microsoft admit they're on an 80-20 path of hybrid cloud. So we're trying, one of our big things is trying to improve governance, and part of the reason we can go through quite a quick upgrade cycle is not customizing the system. We're not here to write an ERP, we're here to get the most out of it. So we've done a lot of cleanup, we've got rid of as many customizations as we can to enable us to make it simpler, which does make the move to the cloud much more simple. I mean, I know there are some other companies out there with some large number of code customizations. You can't move to even a single tenant cloud platform easily. So as we come back to best practice, and again, as we try to sweat the Epicor product as much as we can, hopefully we'll be in a position where we can move easily when the time's right for us.
And without all those extra customizations, I mean, you would have had to mold yourself sort of to the way Epicor works, but as you were sort of just saying, it helps with the upgrade process. It's just much smoother.
Oh, definitely. And I know I talked at the last Insights about how in 24 hours, we'd done a test upgrade. And I think we've dumped, certainly in the last 3 weeks, we've dumped 40% of the customizations we've got. And I think it's getting terminology right of customizations are fine. We're customizing fields and processes to us. Core code modification is just a dead no-no. You see it a lot in implementations, particularly when it's late in the business's cycle and they've suddenly decided they need this. It's how you ask the questions. If you're going to ask people, how would you like to do this? They will take the way they've done it for the last 20 years and tailor the system.
They'll do what they know.
Yeah. Whereas, okay, not everything can be out of the box, but certainly as we look to go forward for a product or a project like CRM, our salespeople are salespeople. Yes, we're selling unique products, but we don't need to tailor that to the way we work.
And have you found that the new features in you've gone up 4 versions of Epicor, have you found that some of the customizations you would have had in the past are simply just part of the standard feature set?
Yeah, and certainly some of the fixes and custom fixes we've had to have put in place are now just rolled into the product. And I think part of the reason for the upgrade was to go for that feature set, to get those upgrades. And I know, it was great to be able to come here for a week and get away, because I know our finance team are fizzing waiting for all the functionality that we can gain from those 3 or 4 versions in one hit. But again, it's a chance for them to sit and we'll do a process review. The value exchange workshop is going to be great, because we'll just sit finance in the room with Epicor, and Epicor can explain to them everything they can do with the product, and then we'll help implement. And I think that's something we're trying to drive in the business. Is CRM is not an IT project, it's a sales project. We're there to facilitate. We don't know everything about the product, so the more help we can get from Epicor. And I think that, I suppose it's, aside from a technical takeaway, a big takeaway we've got is the shift we've seen to Epicor being extremely customer focused. And all these value workshops are free. We're getting a lot more chance to deal with the people. We've been involved in some of the product steering groups to help shape the product as we go forward as well. So it's the ability to connect those direct departments with Epicor that's going to help us.
And so as the CIO of a manufacturing company in New Zealand, manufacturing big equipment, what are some of the other technologies that you're using to help sustain that and make it cheaper, easier, faster, better, all of that?
Robots and lasers. It sounds great. It's always the best story. If you go to a barbecue, you can talk about air conditioning manufacturing, but robots and lasers is where people want to know.
That's it. Sounds like Terminator too.
Yeah. And traditionally, it's been the easier place to get funding for. And Temperzone are really good at investing in that. And they saw that IT really needed some investment a few years ago, and have taken that on. And our CEO particularly is a big believer in Industry 4.0. So we've got 2 robot machines at the moment, and a 3rd laser machine arriving later in the year.
And what do they do?
They are basically robot benders. So two of them are actually bending rather than having somebody standing in a machine with human interaction. And the third is a laser turret punch, which actually is stamping out sheet metal, because we take sheet metal, punch it, bend it, and then start to install components.
So that's part of the production line.
Yeah. And the nice thing is I've been to a few discussions around things like robotic process automation, where big companies are getting into it and then naming their robots, and they're learning the lessons that manufacturing have been going for a while.
Yeah.
And I think we sort of pride ourselves in not using the robots to cut down on the number of staff, because obviously staff are the most expensive out of this. We've always repositioned staff around the business to do that. But it brings with it its own set of challenges as well, because the whole Industry 4.0 means we're trying to tie our ERP to the machines. And from a pure IT challenge, what we're seeing is the machine manufacturers often know their machines really well, we know our IT really well, and that interface gets quite hard, depending on where the machine's from. But we've got European machines, Japanese machines, trying to tie all of that together and manage it, and actually get what we're aiming for now is flow through the factory. It is an interesting challenge. I mean, I'm new into manufacturing from a couple of years ago, and it is quite a different challenge. But it's also exciting, and the possibilities are a lot more. There's so many things we can do to improve the factory. I mean, yes, I'd love to end up looking like Toyota or one of the car manufacturers one day, but it opens up, and it also challenges, and I think Epicor's a reasonably good match for that and sees that. It's not just a behemoth ERP that doesn't really know how manufacturing works.
And one of the examples we saw was a German company, Bauer, and they were using sensors that they had built, quite inexpensively it turns out, to actually analyze the wear and tear on machines and have those machines basically tell the ERP system, hey, something's going to fail soon, you better come and give us some service. They also had these gloves which could detect with sensors whether a part was the correct part, and they had a drone that was going through the factory floor and was doing the stock take, something that could be happening much more quickly on a daily basis, multiple times a day if required. And so do you see yourself, A, retrofitting any of your existing machines with these sensors, and B, using technologies similar to the gloves and drones to further automate, which is kind of what you were talking about. You could make the factory a lot more efficient, and but it's just time and money and as these things mature. But did they excite you?
Yes, don't tell our warehousing guys. I think they were. They thought they were good at asking for tablets, and now it's going to be gloves and drones. I think there's so many things that we want to look at. Even simple things that are in use in a lot of places, vertical carouseling, those sorts of things. We already use some SCADA around the factory. A lot of them, the automated machines that are in there, can report a lot of this back. So there's products like vFactory and Connected Factory that I think are changing the way and the level that we start to see some of this information. Yes, the guys on the shop floor want to monitor the machine, but the GM upstairs wants to get a view of the factory and see how it's going. And I think we're starting to see that even in the units we make, and customers are asking for us, what are some of the things you can track in your products as well. But there's huge scope out there for every part of the factory, I think, right through to shipping the unit out the door, of getting more and more integrated. And equally, because we're almost a B2B2C business, the B2B piece is our customers are asking a lot more from us on a B2B phase as well, of how can we do this.
And as we get to the end of the interview, there's 3 standard questions I always like to ask. One is for you to delve into the crystal ball and tell us what you think manufacturing, cloud, Epicor, and your business will look like over the next decade.
A decade's a very long period of time. I don't even like doing a 5-year strategy. It can be hard sometimes. I think certainly for us and our business, and what we're seeing out of Epicor is a lot more customer focused. The business models are changing, and certainly on the leadership summit track, there's been a lot of talk about that. And it's not quite cutting out your existing customers, but there is a lot more business to consumer, but sidestepping your distributors, because that's the interaction people want to have. They're expecting that simple interface. As you say, as soon as we start talking e-commerce, people go Amazon, and customers want from us that experience. So I think a lot more customer focus, a lot more, I guess, transparent, giving the customers the ability to order online. Technology's changing massively, and we're moving into the IoT field as well. I mean, luckily we have a reasonably large R&D department and a big spend on that. So a lot of these things are sometimes a solution to a problem that hasn't quite been created yet. But we've got units going, IoT units going in some of our larger units that we use for monitoring now that we'll then look to productise.
So this is IoT that you're not putting in the factory to look at various aspects of the factory, but IoT within the units itself for the customers to take advantage of.
Yeah. So at the moment, and they can have visualisation of that, and we're working on how does this work now. I don't think it'll be a Ray Wang air conditioning as a service product quite yet, but it is. We've been monitoring units to help our own development of the products and see how they go through predictive failure and trends and those sorts of things and how the customer's using it. And now we're saying, well, this is very simple for us to offer to our customers. How do you want to monitor it? We can give you this data. So suddenly that it's bringing the R&D and the design people into a field in IT that they haven't touched on before. It's big data, it's analytics, it's you name it. So the whole space is quite exciting because everybody can look and go, my fridge has got IoT and how much use is that for me? But when you think of an air conditioning unit running in the middle of a shopping mall that's spitting out 200 parameters every second to say how the unit's running, there's lots of capability. And I think it's a little bit smoke and mirrors at the moment because the more we've delved into it, we haven't found a lot of people using this and really the same sort of ways. We've had to do work right from the control boards through to putting them on a 4G cell phone network because it hasn't really been done a lot.
Are you imagining that your robots will one day be upgraded to 3D printing machines to print out air conditioning units, or is that a little bit too far in the future?
I don't know. It's a never say never. We've got it now, and I think it was asked earlier on, and there's a lot of people who are using it for prototyping, and it does speed that up. One day, I think it's definitely going to be there. At the moment, it's still literally steel and components.
I mean, your robots and your factory is the 3D printing machine. I mean, to get it any smaller is still too far in the future. You need liquid metal or something to really make it easy.
The really great thing is to wander down in the factory, and there is probably a couple of 60-year-old machines in there, and every now and then somebody will find a job that can only be done on that by one of the experienced guys on the floor. And that's quite nice to see big old pig iron actually making new and modern machines. But it is a constant battle to keep changing. I mean, you've just got to
disrupting yourself.
Yeah. It's. I mean, I know our marketing guys would have said 5 to 10 years ago, who would want to control their air conditioning from their cell phone, and now I can't find the remote at home. I know where the cell phone is. It's just watching that change.
Come home to a cool house.
Yeah.
Nothing could be better. Or a warm house.
Warm house in New Zealand. It's an air conditioner in New Zealand it's a heat pump in New Zealand and an air conditioner in Australia.
That's it. So my second last question is, what's the best piece of advice that you've ever received to help you get where you are today?
I think certainly from career point of view, I started out. I actually took a job in IT. I did an engineering degree. Took a job in IT because it was put on a plate in front of me, and I stayed. Because even if you stay in the same role in IT moves alongside you. And it's keeping that interest up. You've got to keep upskilling all the time. You've got to find some interest in the product. You've got to be passionate about IT. But I reasonably early on in my career, the first 4 or 5 years, realised that I didn't want to specialise and be someone sitting in a dark room cutting code or feeding and watering servers. But I think the scope now in IT is quite different. And I had an engineer who became an architect who worked for me, and he could see it in the stack. Is gone are the days of the guy with the screwdriver going and fixing servers. Now it's platform as a service. Now it's you move software as a service. You've got to keep moving up that stack and learning, but there is scope to be generalist, and I think there is. I'd like to see a lot more people with rich IT backgrounds becoming CIOs, because it can become just another a role at the top that's a business role, and that's great, but you've got to have enough knowledge on the way through to know what's true, because there's a lot of people trying to sell you a lot of products out there. But I would say that, and I don't want to call it emotional quotient, but it's not just being smart, it's being able to interact with people. So working on those skills now, particularly in IT, is just as important as working on your technical skills, because if you want to get to the top and become a CIO, then you need more business and interaction skills than just sitting in a dark room tapping on a keyboard.
in the basement, as I would say in America.
Yeah, yeah.
Your mom's basement.
Yeah. And that's, hey, there are people out there
who are geniuses doing that, yeah.
And follow that, I think, and it's, in some ways, the scope for IT, I've been in IT now probably 22 years, the scope is broad. If you don't want to deal with people, become a technical guru. I mean, you can be an architect, you can be a developer, and I think the one thing, if I could do my time over again, development looks like fun, but there's room for that innovation anymore. You're not doing the same job over and over again. And I'd love to see more women in IT as well, which my wife will love because she was in IT for years as well. But there's nothing stopping you now. It's not a man's world.
It's not Groundhog Day anymore, either.
No, no.
So what's your final message to IT Wire viewers and readers, to Epicor, and to your current and future customers and partners?
I think with Epicor, I think it's keep up the good work. We've seen a shift in the last sort of 12 to 18 months on being customer focused and listening to your customers. And I think that's probably to a lot of software vendors now, is we know what we want to do with the product. If you listen to us, we can help you develop it. And we're not asking for things that are specific to our business. It's what customers want. I think to our customers out there, we're working hard with a large R&D department to try and stay ahead of what you want. But again, give us feedback. Tell us what you want out of our products, and we can look to implement them. And I think in some ways it's keep searching for that quality as well, because we all know it'd be very cheap and easy to move our manufacturing offshore. But there's a little bit of, you get what you pay for, and I think that's the same for some of the products as well.
Well, James, that's been a very interesting discussion. I really appreciate your time. Thank you very much.
No problem. Thank you.